Hello, 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 everybody in TV land, social media land. And this is Pastor Charles Humphrey from Hope's House Christian Ministries. We're here for our second night of Black Fathers Talk. Thank you for those who joined last night. On Thursday, we had amazing cast of fathers talking about everything from old school father issues to corporal punishment, a lot of corporal punishment, and how we didn't come out crazy as a result. That's all good. And we're going to do a little different approach this time because we have some different fathers today, amazing fathers nonetheless, but different fathers with different experiences. We want to highlight some of their experiences tonight. And we're actually going to definitely talk about those father-son dynamics or father-daughter dynamics, but also talk about some issues that are a little more serious in terms of the law enforcement, legal system, how we as fathers, Black fathers in particular, have interacted with those systems in the past and how we can be successful in these systems in the future. And I have two distinguished Black fathers with me. And here's the thing about Black fathers. Black fathers have evolved over time because of our Black culture and from slavery to Jim Crow and Reconstruction and things like that, and now into the modern day. So we have seen some evolution in terms of how Black fathers have had to operate and have adjusted over time. We believe some things that fathers provide are timeless. At the same time, we have to change with the times as much as possible. So we'll talk about some of those dynamics as well. Now, I want to have my two amazing panelists to introduce themselves and give us your name. And if you have a rap sheet or a record, don't share that information, but give us your name as well as what your dynamics are in terms of, did you have a father? Was he present? And what types of children, besides amazing and stupendous, what types of children you have right now that you're raising to be great people in the life. So I'll start with, let's see, D goes for M. Damon Martin. How you doing, sir?
I'm very well, Pastor. Thanks for having me tonight. It's my pleasure to be here, especially since it's a Juneteenth holiday. Thank you, President Biden. And it was a great discussion last night. I wasn't a panelist, but I did participate, and my pleasure to be here. So I'm a deacon in our church. I've been married a little over 20 years. I have two children, a 14-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. My son's transitioning to high school, and it seems like a blink of an eye. He went from, birth to off to high school.
Yep.
I am a full-time college professor. I'm also a lawyer. I've been a lawyer also a little over 20 years. And I have the pleasure and sometimes the pain of practicing in family law. So I see exactly issues that Black fathers deal with our system, whether it be the custody system or the child support system. I tell Black fathers all the time, two systems to avoid: the criminal justice system and the child support system, because both of them tend to beat us up. But there are some resources, and I hope to give a few tips and tidbits as we get into the discussion. But my pleasure to be here, Pastor.
Okay, thank you, sir. So whatever you did, do that, Melvin. Yeah. Good job.
Okay, so I'm Melvin McGuire. I've been married to my wife for 31 years. I am the parent of one just about to be 20-year-old young lady. She is about to be a junior at USC. I work for the city of Long Beach, for the Long Beach Police Department. I'm actually a commander. I'm in charge of the training division for our department. That's the academy, the range, the basic academy, recruiting and hiring, as well as a couple of other things. So I've been at law enforcement for 23 years. I spent 10 years working in juvenile. I did juvenile gangs. I spent some time on campus as a school resource officer, and I've got a perspective on Black fathers. I am the fifth of six boys that my dad had. He was a career Navy man, and then he went on to sell life insurance. I'm sure Pastor Charles has a couple of his life insurance cards still floating around somewhere. And so I'm honored to be here. I look forward to having a good time. I too enjoyed the conversation last night, and I was just laughing at some of the thoughts about corporal punishment based on how I was raised, because it was definitely a different time. So
For sure.
That's me.
Well, cool. Well, thank you guys very much for your participation, and we will get in some deeper issues as we go into the conversation. But first, we're going to establish a Black Fathers Talk tradition this year, and we have to start with corny dad jokes. Okay, so these jokes are things you can use at any given time to embarrass your kids, to repel your kids, to make them not want to deal with you at all. You can use these at parties, use them at your kids' events, and then they will be guaranteed to cause your friends, your kids' friends, and everyone's like, man, this dude, Lord help us. So for Max Effect. So I'm gonna give you these. You don't have to write down. You don't have to write these down. I'll send them to you. We can use at a moment's notice to embarrass your kids. So here's one crazy, corny dad joke. Okay. So what breed of dog can jump higher than a skyscraper? What breed of dog can jump higher than a skyscraper? Ding, ding, ding.
I don't know.
You got me, Pastor.
Any breed of dog, because skyscrapers cannot jump. I need my drum roll. I need some sound effects. Drum roll. Okay.
Well, but we're overthinking these. That's the problem.
Apparently, you did say they were corny.
Don't be cerebral at all. Don't be cerebral. Okay. So listen. How about this? You'll get this one. I know you guys will get this one. What do you call cheese that isn't yours?
Nachos.
Nacho
cheese.
See,
nacho cheese.
Come on, this is nacho cheese. This is very. See, think like a corny dad. Okay, think like an out of touch. No TikTok. No. Think like a dad. Okay. Why? This is for you, David. Why are balloons so expensive?
Because they fly away.
Close. Inflation. Listen. Okay, I got to give you one more because I want you guys to be well-rounded in your approach. Okay,
I wasn't gonna get that one either, D.
Okay, last one. This will really amaze your kids. Why are elevator jokes so good? Why are elevator jokes so good? Think of an elevator. Up and down.
They're short.
They work on many levels. All right. So, okay, enough. That was painful. I know that's painful for you guys.
Oh my God.
Painful. So, dads, you have a special place. And I think that one thing I struggle with as a dad, I think I'm pretty cool. I don't have to be all the way cool, but I think I'm pretty cool. My kids tell me otherwise. So if I'm going to be uncool, let's go all the way uncool and listen, go for broke. And I am armed with resources to make me be uncool if possible, except when I need to pay for a bill, right? And give the credit card. So anyway, so listen, I want to give you a chance to kind of talk about your father experience. I've met Melvin's father for a lot of years. I knew of Damon's father before he passed away, but I didn't really meet him very well. And but he was an upstanding citizen in the church and the community. And so maybe we can talk about just your father experience, how his background as a father shaped yours, his experience, his occupation, mindset in terms of structure, in terms of support. One thing we discussed last night, we got into the corporal punishment discussion. You can mention that if you want to, but I think we concluded that corporal punishment can play a role, especially in the old days. I'll beat you till whatever. But at the same time, the thing that people stuck with was the structure and the presence that made a difference, I think. So, when you talk about that a little bit for your dad, maybe.
So, I mentioned my dad was in the military, so he was in the Vietnam War, and being in the Navy, he would leave and go overseas for 6 to 9 months at a time. And my mom was left to raise 4 very active boys during that time. And technology was not what it is now. And I remember that my dad would tape record messages, and he would send them home on the reel-to-reel tapes. Yeah, and my mom would, she would call us all into the living room, and we're gonna listen to your tape from your dad, and he would just, encourage us, remind us to be good, because that was something that needed to be a daily reminder. He would ask about our grades. He would tell us the things that he knew that my mom had told us about our grades or our behavior issues. There were promises made about what might happen when he got home if we didn't straighten up. Those promises were fulfilled. We knew that there were consequences for poor decisions.
Right.
I think my dad's greatest gift, having 4 boys, is that he understood each of us individually, and he placed expectations and standards on us based on our individual bent.
Right.
And so, like for me, if I brought a C home from school, I was going to have to answer to him because he knew I was not working up to my potential if I was getting C's. And so, he was really good at understanding who his kids were. He never really said anything bad about us to other people. He called us his tigers, and he numbered us. And so at the time, I was the baby in the house, so I was baby tiger. And but he always was very encouraging. Tried to make it to all the sporting events. I remember he coached us in basketball one year, and we were like, "Who knew Pops had all these skills and had this knowledge?" And our chest to chest moment with him was always a foot race.
Oh,
and, yeah, because apparently he was quite the athlete in his day, and he actually had some cleats with wings on the back. And apparently his nickname growing up was Mercury. And so that was one of the ways he established his dominance in the house. And he would take us out in the backyard, and we'd have like a 50-yard foot race. And he always won. And so he let it be known that you guys are good at certain things, but I'm still Pops.
I'm still here. Let you know.
Right. So, but my dad was the kind of dude that would show up at school unannounced. Walk into a classroom, and he's sitting in the back of the room, and he let it be known that even though I may not be here, I'm checking up on you. He knew all of our teachers by their first name. They all knew him. Wow. It was clear to us that I would rather go to jail if I got in trouble with the police than deal with my father.
Wow.
One of the things he told us was, if you get arrested, expect to spend at least one night in jail because I'm not coming to get you. And we believed him, right? So my life goal as a young man was, whatever I do, don't go to jail. And so if a group of friends were deciding to do something, the potential outcome was jail, I was out.
You think it?
I was out. So, and obviously as I got older, I appreciated his fatherhood, his father style. And all of my brothers talk about how, we didn't want to be like him, and we are all like him. And you put us all together, you get him. And now we laugh about it when we see his mannerisms in each other. And I remember the first time I looked at my daughter, and she was looking at me with what we call the McGuire look, and I was like, "Oh my goodness,
here we go.
That's me staring right back at me." So that was me and my pops early on, and I'll talk later in his life later on.
Well, you got me thinking, man. Okay. Damon, you survived your father's.
Yeah, it was some challenges for sure. My father kind of led by example. He wasn't really much on, do this, do that. I really remember even as an early boy of getting up early Saturday mornings, and there would be just expectation of chores. And then when I finished my chores, then it would be time for projects. He was very handy. So deck building, plumbing, I mean, you name it. It was like you were expected to be the helper. And so your Saturdays got dominated. In fact, even when I got older, if I wanted to go play with my friends, I had to wash cars, cut grass. I had to do these things. And my friends would be like, don't even call Damon before like 12 or 1 because he has to knock out these chores before he's, yeah. And as I got older, of course, I didn't like it as a kid. But my father was an extremely hard worker. I mean, we lived in LA, and he saw the neighborhood around us going a direction he wasn't comfortable with. So he moved us from LA. And, both my parents moved us from LA to Diamond Bar, but he still worked in LA, in El Segundo. So he made that, hour and a half drive to and from. And that just really set the standard for me of just the idea of just being a hard worker. And I didn't appreciate that as much as a kid, but I see him laying those nuggets, like Melvin said, about helping to build your character. And my father had a military background, like Melvin's dad, and he didn't much play either. He didn't mind having a stern hand. His philosophy was, open hand on bare bottom. So if you got trouble, just go and pull those pants down and expect to handle it. So he kind of kept me and my older sister in line in that respect. So he wasn't a man to really share and express his feelings. I really believe that from the military background. And so his way of really showing love was really by, acts. So showing up places, gifts. So he wasn't really much about, good job, patting the back, but he really was, I'm doing all this to make your life better. And one thing I try to tell people, if you want to understand your parents, if you can, look at their parents.
Right.
That really gives you an insight into your parents. And when I was about 14, my dad's parents came to live with us, and I saw their dynamic, and I saw not only the husband and wife dynamic, but I saw my father and his father, and it really started to enlighten me about why he behaves some of the ways he behaves. And like Melvin said, as much as I fight it, I find myself repeating the same things he would say, the same list of chores I've now given to my kids. So the cycle is just continue to come. And so I think we all take the nuggets from our parents and try to be a better parent to the next generation. So I still try to have the stern kind of discipline, kind of focus, hard work, but then I try to couple it with more words of encouragement.
Right.
So, I believe that, your kids are going to have therapy, but just have them need a little bit of therapy, not this much therapy. If they get out your house just with this much therapy, I think you did a good job as a parent.
Oh my God. Interesting. You made an interesting point. Made me realize, because my dad, I left home and me and Melvin started college together in like the river back in the day. And so, but now my dad's living with us. My wife is threatening me, saying, if you ever act like that when you get older, you're out of here. And I've seen myself act a certain way, like, oh, God, let me get myself together, because she about to put me in the back house. Or he be saying some stuff to be cutting. I'm like, dog, man, where's the compassion? He like just black, like, and because he's 87, we take it like, okay, he don't know what he's saying.
we take it.
But I see some tendencies now, because I see him face to face more often than I never saw before. Like, that's kind of scary. So let me pray and exercise these demons now, man. It's gonna be some tough sledding where I need to be taken care of. So anyway, and my father's more of a by example person. He wasn't a whole bunch of do's and don'ts. He was more of a he had a janitorial business, so we had to work with him Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday or Sunday every week. We got paid minimal wages, but that was just a routine. We worked together, and even when mom and dad divorced, we were still working with him. That was our connection, was work. So that ethic is still there. So yeah, man, we can't get too far from the tree, as you say. So well, let me ask you if you can think of one of them. I know, Melvin, you got a ton of them, I know, but one of the most incredible or zaniest experience with your dad, as far as that dynamic, or like you said, doing the races, or with his, not even so much discipline, but what surprised you about your dad in a good way, bad way? So, like, what the heck? He, like for me, my dad we were chasing him as kids, and you have these fences on the side of the house, like a 4-foot fence, and my dad hurdled the fence. Like, what the heck? And we're chasing him around the house. He hurdles the fence, and we come to screech and holler like, "How'd you do that?" And that was a long time ago. I was smaller, but I don't think even as a dad, my kids would never see me hurdle a fence, especially not that. So I had kids older, but anything that surprised you about your dad, like you said, skills or awareness or showing up or whatever, or put the fear of God in you?
Well, this is kind of funny, because I think they were talking about this last night. So my dad, being a Navy man, was a fish in the water. He was an absolute fish in the water.
A black man who could swim.
Yes, and he could dive and he could swim very, very well. And he learned to swim in the ocean in the Navy.
Oh, that's real.
And so when it came time for us to learn how to swim, he was the dad that just threw you in the pool. And he would be close enough to keep you from drowning, and he's giving you instructions, and you're like, "Look, bro, I'm not trying to kick and stroke and breathe." So he started with the oldest, and he threw him in, and then I saw how the process worked. So by the time he got to me, I was nowhere to be found, because I was not a fan of the process. But as a result, I was the last of my brothers to learn how to swim because I didn't want to submit to his process. Now it was, it seemed a little barbaric to me, but all my brothers are very efficient in the water, and like I said, he was always close enough to where he would get to you, and you had to trust him, right? I mean, there's a spiritual lesson there. I got you. If you just do what I say, you're going to be all right. And he's like, so that was one thing, and then he also taught us all how to drive. And Damon talked about his dad being a hard worker. My dad always had more than one job, even when he was working full time in the Navy. I remember he was a bill collector for Sears, and we'd go out with him. He would take me because I was real good with maps and figuring out how to get from one place to the next. And I remember one night we were deep in LA, and we lived in San Pedro at the time. And we were deep in LA, and the brakes on his car went out. And this brother drove us all the way home with no brakes. And when I say no brakes, I mean no brakes.
How?
So we may or may not have driven on a sidewalk or two. He was making a lot of right turns because he didn't stop. I remember we got on the freeway. We did as much as we could on the freeway, but we didn't live. We didn't live anywhere near a freeway, and so he would negotiate. He negotiated us from coming deep in the heart of LA all the way back to San Pedro with no brakes. And I remember just telling my brothers, "Man, Dad drove all the way home. We had no brakes." And I'm telling them, we was driving on the sidewalk. We were cutting through gas stations. It's not that we didn't stop; we couldn't stop. And the other thing that my dad was famous for was sleep driving. We drove long distance on a regular basis as a family, and when the road was long and straight, like say you're going to Bakersfield or going to San Francisco, he would straddle the lane, and then he would go to sleep. And because he was a military man, he was a light sleeper. And if the car would drift one way or the other, when you went over the little road, that would wake him up. And then he would steer the car back to the middle and go on back to sleep. And I can remember being in the backseat of the car, waking up. It's 2:00 in the morning. We were driving in Seattle or Washington somewhere, and we were hurtling down the highway at 70 miles an hour, and everybody in the car asleep.
Listen,
he got his head back.
You a miracle, dog. You a miracle.
And so all of his sons have a love of long distance driving, and praise God, with today's technology, we don't have to sleep drive. But yeah, that was one thing about him that was. I tell that story, people don't believe it. It's like, I'm telling you, dude, it was routine for him. Routine.
Well, I'm done. Okay, Damon, you ain't got to top that story, but just tell your truth, brother. Tell your truth.
It's two things that stand out in my mind. My father got us a basketball goal in the backyard, and I'm in high school. I'm playing freshman basketball. I think I'm pretty hot stuff. So I challenged my dad. He rarely played basketball with us. So we go to the backyard. We're doing the one-on-ones. We're about almost the same height at this point. And he's a lefty. He starts pulling out his left hand hooks like cream. It's unguardable. And they just started going in. He's using angles on the backboard. And he's like, who is this cat? And it was got to the point he just got frustrated. And I was like, you know what? I don't even want to play anymore because clearly I misunderstood the level of talent I'm dealing with. Because as a kid you want to dribble fast and all that stuff. He's like, I'm just gonna back you down and just do this and just wear you out. So that stands out in my mind. And when my father taught me to drive too, Melvin, and he was explaining to me, he was like, so this is an internal combustible engine, right? And he broke it down where turn the gas on, the gas lights with the pilot light, and there's an explosion, and I was just like dumbfounded, like, wow, how do you know all this about the internal combustible engines? Like, and so if there was something that went wrong with the car, he was like, oh, we'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll figure it out. One time we were driving somewhere and the car overheated, and he was like, we'll just pull over, let it cool down. There was a hole in one of the tubes. We maneuvered the tube and just got back on the road like it was nothing.
Right.
And we're so quick to call AAA if there's a flat tire or whatever. That was like foreign to him. Like, what you call AAA for? We'll just we'll pull over, we'll crank it up, we'll replace the tire, put the donut on, and keep going. And that kind of stuff I really appreciate about him.
Yeah.
And those are things that I'm not particularly good at, which makes it even more appreciative that he had that skill set.
Yeah, one brother said last night something similar to what you said, that you didn't ask for outside help, you did it yourself. I mean, and I think that's a carryover from having to be independent, not depending upon society to help you or white society to help you as a black man. You just had to, if you were somewhere, you had to figure out how to make it happen, because you may not get the help that you're looking for, and it's not nearly as accessible back then as it is to us now. Credit cards, and especially with Jim Crow and the Green Book, you get certain things you can and cannot stop, So
Right.
that's not the reality of them. You just had to figure out how to do stuff yourself, man, because your help wasn't coming. There wasn't no Walmart or Pet Boys around the corner, that would take your service. So that's cool. So, but you guys mentioned, I'm gonna touch on my message on Sunday. You guys give me information. Bad dad superpowers, and as a kid, we think our dad is Superman to some degree. So when you say your dad is a great swimmer or your dad can fix anything, yeah, that's real, man. That's like, dude, you all that. Pull out the cape, the S, everything. Right. So in a kid's eyes, it really has a lot of weight. So crazy stuff, man. Cool. Thank you for that. I want to ask you real quickly. So in light of your dad, there may be some things that you saw your dad do that you could not get away with these days. You would never even try. Driving. I'm gonna leave you alone, Melvin. I like pull over, call 911, but no, not your dad. In terms of child rearing, where are some things that you think that dad was old school? I could never do that in good conscience or even skill set wise. That you would, as you raise your kids, that's just uncharted territory.
Wow. Well, I would start with the discipline, the corporal punishment. Again, 4 boys. We're all very active, very rambunctious. We grew up in a multicultural neighborhood in Navy housing, and so when he was away, every other dad on the block had permission to help keep everybody else's kids in line. And I have friends to this day that we were in elementary school together. And we've got experiences of, his dad was overseas, and so my dad would have to help discipline himself and his family, and vice versa. And one of my brothers is actually a karate expert, black belt. He actually just got inducted to the Karate Hall of Fame a couple of years ago, last year, I think.
Wow.
And one of our neighbors was a Filipino man who was in the Navy, and he was a karate expert, and he would teach the kids in the neighborhood karate. And Matt just took to it and stuck with it throughout his life. But it was like, when my dad was overseas, we would go across the street to Mr. Bunch, and if you was acting a fool, Mr. Bunch would stand in for your father. And we talk about it takes a village. We actually lived that. So at some point, my grandmother, my dad's mom, came and lived with us, and she was from Chicago. And I remember at one point, I did something to disrespect her. And I'll be honest, I did it on purpose. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, but what I did intentionally. And, as boys, we thought it was funny. Well, my dad did not think it was funny. And so I remember he was standing in front of me. We were talking, and then he just punched me in the chest. Boom. And, he made it very clear that if you're gonna mess with my mother, I'm gonna deal with you like a grown man, right? And I could never do that. In terms of trying to teach my child respect by using corporal punishment like that. And at the time, because corporal punishment was a part of our lifestyle, and all the kids in the neighborhood, it really wasn't that big a deal, other than the fact that he treated me like a man in that moment. And he didn't hurt me, but it was just like, this is what you look forward to if you continue along this path.
Yeah.
And so, and I look at my daughter now, I don't know that I've ever hit her in anger.
Right.
She was really, really good at doing what she was supposed to do and correcting behavior without us having to get physical with her. And I'm eternally grateful for that. I really, really am. My daughter, she's a great kid. And to me, she's just a genius. And I'm so grateful that I think she started life kind of where I'm ending. and I expect her to go beyond, what anything I've ever accomplished. And that was my dad's desire for us. He worked 2 and 3 jobs. He stressed education because he wanted his sons to have a better life. And I remember, for him, one of his greatest sources of pride was that all of his sons owned their own homes.
Mm.
When he introduced us, he talked about it. They're all homeowners. And he understood how important that was as far as financial literacy. And he knew he wasn't going to be able to do more because he had worked so much trying to keep us out of trouble and get us on the right track. And that resonates with me. And so, my daughter, she's already playing around in the stock market and thinking about investing. And she's stepping off where we're ending up. And I know you guys are in the same situation. And so I mentioned on Facebook that, I'm trying to teach the same values, just using different methods.
Right.
Because there was not a lot of negotiation. There was not a lot of talking. There was not a lot of, well, this is how I feel and this is what I think. And so I understand that and I grew up in a house full of boys.
Right.
My mother was the only woman in the house, and she was a little woman, but she handled us, because she had to. So, I think that's one of those things, and I'm a lot more verbal than my father is in terms of giving my daughter praise. The best thing for us, if you knew my dad, he liked to whistle, and we could recognize him whistling coming from outside, like you're at a school play or doing something like that. And when he was proud of you, he would tell you he was proud of you, but it was really more the way he carried himself. Because when he was proud of his kids, he stuck his chest out and he just kind of strutted like those are my boys, those are my tigers. It wasn't a constant verbal affirmation. And he also paid attention and would buy us gifts that he probably couldn't afford, but he would do the extra thing to make sure that we had what we needed. And I remember when I was in high school, I was on the tennis team. I made the tennis team, and I wanted a certain tennis racket, and he went above and beyond to get it for me.
Wow.
And then when it broke, he took me back to the store and showed me how to handle customer service in a professional, but effective manner. And so I remember one time we asked him for money, and he bought us a lawnmower and encouraged us to start our own lawnmower business.
Woo!
But at least he bought the lawnmower. This is my contribution. I'm buying the lawnmower. Now you do the work.
Teach a man to fish, huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Let me get Damon a little different tip. You have a son and a daughter, and you have a son who has special needs. And how do you balance, in light of what your dad taught you, do all the work? Well, you told us you make him do work already, so that's a given. But how do you balance those different challenges?
Well, that is the constant struggle. I hit my son one time in anger, and I've never done it again. I don't believe in corporal punishment. I just don't think it's as effective for my son because he's special needs. How do you discipline the special need versus the bad behavior? How you decipher that? How you decipher that in a moment of anger? It's very difficult. So the best thing I found is just not to do it.
Right.
For my daughter, a stern look or a raise of the voice is enough to send her running. So there's no need to do that. But as some of the panelists said last night, taking away my son's this thing is all you need to do. This is discipline enough. Oh, you don't get this for the rest of the day. Then that usually gets the behavior back in line. So really trying to parent to the different needs of the child. I think in our generation, that's more important for us, and maybe we have a little more time and freedom. Like Melvin's father, my father, we're working so hard. I don't think you really have time to really, dig deep into your children to that level where it's like, look, I need for you to behave right now, and maybe corporal punishment is a quick trigger to get you back in line. My father spanked us, but I mean, that was like nuclear bomb. And you really had to do something bad to get a spanking. He was much better at lecturing. His lectures were longer, far more effective. So I almost rather get the spanking and get over it. But the lecture could last 15, 20 minutes. And you leave his bedroom, head down, feeling like you're the worst kid in the world. So, but like Melvin said, when we were at that age, we wanted to break dance. We wanted to have those pull away sweatsuits, And my father was like, well, if you want it, here's a lawnmower. Go up and down the block and cut your neighbor's yards and get the money. But I'm not going to give it for you. So, me and my cousins would go and, we would butcher our neighbor's grass. You're like 10, whatever. So, but the community thing, I agree with you, Melvin. The community just felt like we had to support you, even though you were doing a crappy job cutting grass. But because you had the initiative, the community supported. And I do appreciate that about my dad. And I think that's in part why, entrepreneurship is important to me, because I saw it in him. But the thing I agree with Melvin, I really want to promote positive reinforcement, kudos, words of encouragement that wasn't always given to me as growing up. But I remember one time I said, son, I'm really proud of you. And just to see his face light up. And it just reminds you how important those words are as a parent, how much, particularly as a father.
Yeah, cool. No, thank you for that. That's good stuff. I want to change direction a little bit, because you both are in institutions. You touch institutions that we as African Americans have dealt with for years. Those institutions have not been in our favor in many cases. The legal institutions, jurisprudence, as well as the law enforcement, because of racism and things like that over the years. So let me know how you approach. We understand the history. There's lots of documentation on history. Like I said, Jim Crow, Reconstruction, black codes, all these different things. And there's been an evolution of our laws, but to some degree, but not all the way. And there's evolution of how people deal with laws and legal systems. Just give me your perspective on how black men, black fathers can navigate these systems. They ain't going away, but we have to learn how to work the system or use it to our advantage, or even win in these systems. What do you suggest? Now, I'm gonna start with the legal aspect, Damon, from your standpoint. Black man, child court, family court, arrested, incarcerated, as much as you can. I know it's a wide range of stuff, but some of your experiences, perspectives, how can we be successful in these areas?
With the family court issue and system, one thing to keep in mind is that your chances are better off if you actually go to court. There are some barriers I find in court, in getting to court. So, for example, in a child support case, you have to go to this mediation, if you will, with the other parent and with someone from the child support system. And I've seen a lot of black fathers get turned off by the interaction during this mediation. We're like, you know what, forget it, I'm just going to leave. And that's the one thing you don't want to do. If you're going to be told no by the man or woman wearing a black robe. Don't be told no and walk away by another opposition, whether it be the mother or be the other attorney. So I'd really try to encourage people, go into court and make your pitch. When you go into court, have a plan. I hear people say all the time, well, I want 50-50 custody. No one knows what that means. We do know what it means when you say, I can, with my work schedule, I can have the child on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or I'm free on Saturdays because I don't work. See, that's a plan. And if you present a plan to the judge will buy off of it. But if you go in there and say, well, I want 50-50 and she's not letting me see the kid, you're heading down a terrible path versus saying, this is the plan that I have. And a lot of times the court will buy out on it. The courts are looking to see, a balance between two households. So if you can show that you are a competent parent, your chances are pretty good of getting some time with the child.
Okay.
In the criminal court system, here you want to present your best case. And I see a lot of young black men who go to court, and it's one thing to have a demeanor on the street. It's a different thing to have a demeanor in the courtroom. And whether you would call it a mask, however it is you want to position it, you have to shift. I recall going to criminal court, and I would see young men with those searches on, say shirt that would say "Stop snitching," and the pants sagging. Well, what message are you sending to the court? I don't think you're sending a message that's going to be helpful to you. Now, look, if you want to put that shirt on in the car and go back to the street, so be it. But when you go into court, this is really the demeanor you want to present yourself, and the outcomes will be so much better for you.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that perception is people's reality, right? And so if they perceive you as a threat or as offensive or irreverent. That's going to stick in their minds, especially in a jury situation. I've noticed this strategy that people do. Couple strategies I noticed with people who have done some crazy stuff. They either come to the court, suit and tie with glasses on, look a little more intelligent, a little more whatever, refined, or they're either like the older people who've done all kind of dirt for years. They always got a walker. They look injured, hurt, like Harvey Weinstein. It's like, oh, all of a sudden you can't walk? For real? Come on now. Are you serious? Okay. Yeah, I mean, but anything to get sympathy. I'm not saying it's right. It's what people do, though. But if nothing else, come like you're serious about this issue. And as they say sometimes, even show an ounce of remorse or something. If you're, so that's, those are all strategies. But anyway, that's the court. And we can talk about the court system all day and all night. Those are good tips. And I think for the fathers, especially in custody issues, stay engaged. Don't just throw away your rights because you'll never get them back. Melvin, so let's talk about law enforcement and interface with law enforcement because that's a hot topic, obviously, since Mike Brown, whatever, Fernando Castillo, the most current, George Floyd, obviously. And I know we can't dissect all of it, but we can talk about the talk and preparing our kids, but we can also talk about how we should interface with law enforcement, whether they're on our side or not on our side, whether they're good or bad cops, whatever. Since you're training.
Oh well, wow. Let me tell you this. I spent 4 years at one particular high school as the school resource officer, and I made a lot of arrests. Unfortunately, I dealt with a lot of kids. And I think the last 3 years I was there, we recovered 16 guns off of kids. So it's a urban school in a very busy part of the city. And in my 4 years, all the kids I dealt with, I can think of one black father, one, who came up to the school and was actually disappointed in their child, apologetic for their child's behavior, and embarrassed and ashamed of how their child acted. 90% of the time, it was the mom who came up to the school. When the dad came, the dad probably had his own negative experiences with law enforcement, and that became apparent. It was always, somebody else's fault. It was always somebody else was responsible. And I understand them standing up for their kid, but a lot of times they put the child in a position where they were never going to take responsibility for what they did, regardless of all the other things that may have been going on. And it wasn't always a perfect system where their kid was getting a fair shake. Sometimes their kids were prejudged. Sometimes their kids were, looked at the wrong way. And so when it comes to interacting with law enforcement, it always goes back to respect. I was raised to respect authority, respect your elders, respect your teachers. If my dad had to come to my school because me or one of his boys was disrespecting anybody in authority, problems,
right?
Immediate problems. There was because his thing was, why am I here? I should not be here. If you are acting like you are supposed to be acting, there should be no reason for them to call me up to this school unless you were sick or hurt. And so, what I saw in my experience was, one, the absence of black fathers in the lives of the kids that interact with the criminal justice system. And two, a basic lack of respect for authority when they do interact with the police, whether they're talking back, whether they're talking trash, whether they're making threats, whether they're just not following simple instructions. It all can be interpreted as a sign of disrespect. And for police officers, it all can be interpreted as a red flag that could lead to a dangerous or volatile situation. And I know people don't like to hear, the whole adage about complying. You have to comply, because obviously, if you comply, it doesn't automatically 100% every single time guarantee that nothing bad will happen.
Right.
But that is the best way to get to the next part.
Right.
And, police officers have tens of millions of contacts with civilians all year round, and most of them don't end in any type of violent act because people cooperate, people comply. And officers are taught because the law says that people are supposed to comply with lawful orders. So there's an expectation that you're going to do what they say. When you don't, and how you don't, can then dictate what goes from there. And it is unfortunate. We can train officers to be patient. We can train them to de-escalate. We can train them to do a lot of different things. But there's still cultural biases that exist. There's still implicit bias that exists. There's still racism that exists. And there's still a lack of respect that actually goes both ways that exists.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before, how our culture tends to glorify violence. We tend to glorify unlawful behavior. We tend to glorify self-destructive behavior. That is what is out there to the world to say this is who we are. And we take pride in those things. And then we seem surprised when people treat us the way we are asking to be treated or the way we treat ourselves. And so what we do in training, I actually just put together a class called The History of Policing, where I talk a lot about the Black experience and Jim Crow and slave patrols and the Civil Rights Act and the parallels and the things that have changed and the things that haven't and how things are perceived, giving officers hopefully an opportunity to understand this is why people react the way that they do. It has nothing to do with you, right? It has to do with their experiences, their oral history, what they've seen, what they've heard. And just because you weren't involved in it doesn't mean it's not true. It happened. These things happen. And so as a profession, we have to embrace our history, all of it, just like our country. We have to embrace our history, all of it, the good and the bad. So we have a lot of examples of police officers doing a lot of good things for people, but it's customer service. Nobody remembers the good stuff. They only remember the bad stories. Yeah. And the bad stories are the ones that travel. And so our challenge now is, I work in LA County. Something happens in Georgia or Minneapolis or Tennessee that has nothing to do with us, and all of a sudden we have to explain it.
Ripple effect.
Like that wasn't us. But that's how African American men have lived their lives my entire life, right? I walk into a store and people assume a certain thing about me, right? I had an experience at work where I had to go to the doctor on duty, and I needed to look at my knees, so I was wearing short pants. I wasn't in my uniform. And, I'm just a black man in shorts and a T-shirt looking to get somebody to look at my knee. And, the lady's like, can you write your name down? Sure. I wrote my name down and all this other stuff. And then, I went and sat down, and then when she called me, she's like, Commander McGuire? I'm like, yeah, that's me. And there was a different approach once she recognized, oh, this gentleman holds a position of significant rank. She thanked me for my service. She thanked me for being a police officer, for all we do. And the level of service I got was appropriate for a commander, right? But I didn't come in there trying to big time anybody. I just wanted to get I'm just a brother with some sore knees. I was trying to get my knees looked at. So the short answer to the question is respect. You may not like it. It may be uncomfortable. Do what the officer says. On the side of the road is not the place to have that argument or that discussion, right. Because you're probably going to lose. There are things that you can do. Officers wear body-worn cameras now, for the most part. So the interaction is already going to be recorded. You have the right to record the police. You have to do it from a safe distance. And sometimes the police officer will determine what makes them feel safe. Respect that. You can still record. And then, let the system work. And I say let the system work, acknowledging that the system does not always work in our favor.
Correct. Yeah.
But when you fight the system,
you put yourself in more.
You are at even more of a disadvantage. And these days, I think people are willing to acknowledge that the system doesn't always work in our favor. So if you go through the system, you're going to have a better chance of getting justice than if you try to take matters into your own hands. Because on the side of the road, in a back alley somewhere, the chances are you're going to lose that. And then who's left to tell your story?
Correct. Yeah. No, thank you for that, both of you guys. We know we live in a very imperfect world. As you said, there are racial biases, there's gender biases, there's implicit biases all around. And I've concluded this in this season and I've heard young guys who have interacted with the cops and maybe they ran or resisted or whatever, and Some guys say they were afraid that the cop might do worse things to them. But I think in terms of margin, first of all, as your dad would say, don't do nothing to make me come up to the school and have to deal with you, one. So that's your biggest margin right there. But then it gets narrower once you cross the line of doing unlawful activities. Now you put yourself in a situation where you don't know what kind of cop you're going to run into. Or in Damon's case, you don't know what kind of judge you're going to run into. So do everything you can to prepare yourself for whatever outcomes. This preparation and even strategy, as you said, of a plan. Give yourself as much margin as possible to succeed. Know the process isn't great in every case. Know the systems aren't perfect. Yes, there are challenges and problems in these systems, but give yourself as much margin. So if you're popping off at a cop, like maybe we always say a white person could have got away with the same thing and left without any scars, that may be true, but give yourself as much margin as you can give yourself. So you don't be in a situation where you are on the news or whatever. And once again, I know there's some very strong narratives out there both ways. At the same time, I recognize, and I think you summed it up well, Melvin. Yeah, you can record, do your due diligence, but do as much as you can in a safe way. Give yourself options as opposed to putting yourself in a situation where you have less options. You got an upset officer or pissed off, judge or whatever, or a DA who's non-responsive or whatever, or has an agenda. Give yourself as many options as possible. So, yeah, man. So, last comment I want for you guys. You have a college-age daughter. You got a young man going to high school, and you have a younger daughter. What is your hope for them in this crazy mixed-up world as African Americans? What do you want them to take away in this time? And I'll just start with myself because I got a daughter who's going to college after Zooming for college that's been away. She's supposed to be in DC but wasn't, so there's no college experience. Then you feel like I did all this work for high school to get into college, and now the world is crazy politically, protests, pandemic. Where's my hope? What am I looking forward to? Why even work so hard and try? What words do you want to offer to our young Black people as a father in these days? Melvin?
Whew. Wow. That's
need a word, brother.
Well, I thought of this morning and I'll share it. I think that the presence of gifts is not as important as the gift of your presence. And if you can't physically be there for whatever reason, call your kid, talk to your child every day, talk to them every night. Get involved in their life. Let them know that you are interested. Give your opinion where you can. Give the wisdom when it's asked for. Help your child make good decisions. For my daughter, she was at USC for almost a year, and then she came home because of the pandemic, and she's been here ever since. And now she's going to go back in the fall. And I'm like you. I share those concerns. So because she was here, we were able to have some conversations about some of the things that were going on. But we're two different generations, and I don't insist that she sees things the way that I see things. I think that she is genius in a lot of ways, and she's always been able to take information and see both sides and make her own decision and explain to you why she believes and feels what she believes and feels. So that's really all that I can ask for. She doesn't have to be my clone. I don't get everything right. The other thing I would say for fathers is be man enough to admit when you're wrong, and don't be afraid to apologize to your child. I think they respect that. They know you're not perfect, even though we are superheroes. From time to time, they know we make mistakes, and we need to own them and lead by example in that respect. Ultimately, as a man of faith, you have to cover your kids in prayer. Send them across the country, or for me, send them into another part of the city. If something happens, I still can't get there as fast as I'd want to be there. And so, I set her up with people that I know that work and live around USC. If she ever needed something, she had resources that she could call on. But ultimately, she's in God's hands. And I'm so grateful that she has her own relationship with the Lord. And, she has to learn how to trust him. And it's like us. You think of some of the stuff that we did, and like, if my dad knew, if my parents knew, But they had to just trust me with God, and we got through it. And it's easy to say, it's difficult to watch, them make mistakes and fall down and get back up and that kind of thing. And so God is good, and He's omnipresent. But I think the presence of the Father, and it doesn't have to be physical. The presence of the Father in the child's life is the best thing that we can do. Is to let them know, I'm here, I see you, I got you. We don't have to agree on everything. I'm going to support you, and your life is yours to live. I'm going to try and leave a legacy, but they got to do them.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's good, Melvin.
He took all your words, Damon.
Yeah, he did. It's hard to really follow that.
No.
The one thing I would say from the legal standpoint is try to co-parent. The relationship failed between you and the woman, but that doesn't mean the relationship has to fail between you and the child.
That's good.
So try to co-parent. Before the pandemic, parents would have to go to mediation in the mediation office at downtown court, right? And while they're waiting for the case to be called, there's a video on loop. And the video, the first 15 minutes, would talk about how these kids feel horrible about how their parents are behaving. Then the last 15 minutes will be these kids who are like, things are so much better. Mom and dad can talk. They come to my game and mom doesn't sit over there and dad sits over there. It's all awkward. And you could just see the disposition of the children because the parents start acting like adults.
Right.
So trying to co-parent doesn't mean you love her anymore. Doesn't mean you necessarily get along with her anymore. But, at the exchanges, can you say hello?
Yeah.
At the exchanges, can you say, positive thing about the other parent? One of the things I heard a judge say, which was amazing, he said, I'm going to order you to say something good about the mom in the presence of the child. Mom, I'm going to order you to say something good about the dad. Now you can't enforce that, of course, but still, just the idea of, your dad is a hard worker. Your mom really loves you. Those kind of things, to hear the other parents say it, I think it's so powerful. So just the ability to get past my own anger, distrust, you hurt me, you cheated on me, whatever it is, but just don't project that onto the child. If you can develop that skill set, I think you really go a long way to setting your children for a great success. Yeah. In this season, I'm really just trying to encourage parents and even myself to protect my children's innocence. Still let them be a kid. The other day I was chasing my daughter. She was learning to ride, working on riding her bicycle. And you've seen that example where the father kind of holds onto the back of the seat and the child. Just those experiences of trying to protect the innocence. Yeah. Look, they see, unfortunately, YouTube of George Floyd, and they see protests and everything else. And of course, they know about the pandemic. So what can we do as parents to still let them be kids? And I'm really trying to protect some level of innocence in both these kids. You get the rest of your life to be an adult. And while it looks like it's fun to be an adult, it sucks as compared to being a kid.
Adulting is hard.
You really want to preserve every moment of your childhood as you can. Michael Jackson spent all his millions of dollars trying to get his childhood back. And so you don't want to be in that position. So I'm trying to just give them little nuggets of enjoying your childhood. And as Melvin said, I would encourage fathers to be a provider. It doesn't necessarily mean financial, but a provider could be, present. If you can't afford a present, being present is important. I was really discouraged in court recently where, the mother was fighting over Father's Day. He can't have one Sunday to celebrate Father's Day with the child. You can't give up one Sunday so mom can be a mom on Mother's Day. I mean, that kind of petty stuff is just detrimental to children. And as we say all the time, Pastor, hurt people. And it always goes back to the childhood. And I love how we talk about father's wounds. It always goes back to the wounds that we as fathers put on our children. So it's a challenge. And I say this all the time. To drive, you get a driver's license. To own a firearm, you need a firearms license. To be a parent, just go lay with someone. No training, no licenses, just go out there and good luck.
Yeah.
And hope the child turns out okay. So to the extent that you can be a parent I thank God for my other parents, coaches, Cub Scout leaders, neighbors. Those are fathers we should recognize on Father's Day as well. So if you can't be a father or you're not a father, be a coach, be a mentor, be an uncle, just be someone around and help shape the life of a young person.
Amen. Thank you for that. You guys both shared some very, very valuable information from a professional standpoint and also some great experiences. So we're going to close on that note. I want to just say thank you to both of you all. I don't have any gifts for you or anything like that. So we a low budget enterprise here, but I appreciate you immensely.
That's good enough.
But really, and definitely praying for your kids as they grow and navigate the world we live in, and believing that my intention with this broadcast, whether a lot are watching now or later, that someone would catch something on here that inspires them, challenges them, reminds them of the reasons we are here as fathers, and don't give up in the fight. As you said, there's no owner's manual for this job, and it's an iterative learning process. And as much as you can take classes about what to do in pregnancy and birthing and, nursing and swaddling kids and, school issues and tutoring, you cannot really be totally ready for this experience called fatherhood. So thank you for being fathers, ready, willing, and able to be parents to some amazing kids. So with that, we'll say goodbye, good night. Have a great evening and have a great Father's Day, both of you guys.
Thank you, PC.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care.
Good night.
Bye, Dave.
Peace out.
Take care.